All right, today I'm excited to welcome Lance Cayko to the show. Lance, thanks for joining me. How are we doing today?
Thanks for having me, Brian. Doing great, doing great. Enjoying the nice weather here before it hits freezing, crazy cold, but that's all good because I'll be ice fishing this weekend, so I'm a happy guy.
Oh, nice. My wife and I lived in Minnesota for 20, well, she lived her whole life. I was there for 20-ish years, and ice fishing was definitely a thing, but we skedaddled out of there because of the cold, and I'm not missing it. But yeah, we got a cold front coming in after the recording of this. I think it'll probably be long gone by the time this airs later in February, but yeah, it's rough, man. So if you would you introduce yourself to the audience? I like to have the guests tell the audience where they're at, who they are now, and then we circle back and talk about how you got there.
Yeah, okay, yeah. My name is Lance, as Brian mentioned. Last name is really pronounced Cayko. I love the emphasis that he put on that as well. It's spelled Cayko. It's the perfect icebreaker. I've leaned into it my whole life. I'm 42 years old, twice divorced, happily, hopefully about to be engaged again soon. And I'm a serial entrepreneur, is what I consider myself. And under that moniker, I'm an architect. I'm also a general contractor. I'm a real estate developer. I have a nonprofit community garden, and I'm a professional fisherman.
That's a couple things. you got
And sometimes I teach at universities. So last year I taught at 2 universities at the same time, which is very interesting to juggle. So there you go.
I can imagine that the schedule is kind of full there. I mean, with all of that on the plate, I think it'll be an interesting story on how you kind of developed into all that. Going back to when you were a kid, uh, did you want to be one or any of those things when you were a kid, or what did Lance want to grow up to be?
Yeah. Well, first I just wanted to be a builder. I grew up between a cattle ranch and a sugar beet farm in northwest North Dakota. And on the sugar beet farm, my dad was sort of the he was the lead at the farm, kind of kept it together. Grandpa was sort of drunk. If it wasn't for dad, but we honestly would have lost the farm. So thank God bless dad. But I tried irrigating one summer with him the sugar beets, which we had to do by hand. It was very hard work, and it wasn't that I was so much adverse to the work. It was just not the kind of work I liked. Lasted about a week. Didn't really get along with my dad too well at that time either. But my best friend Chris was like, I'll take the job, and I go, great. Now it'll be way easier for me to tell dad, hey, this isn't for me. Don't worry, Chris will help you out, and I'm gonna call up your best friend Bruce, who's a general contractor. I'd rather try like building stuff. I just always been interested in that as somebody who grew up sketching all the time, and then Lincoln Logs and Legos and that sort of story that you've probably heard before. And so I did. I quit that job, called up his best friend Bruce, who's a general contractor, about 15 miles away, and I said, hey, I'll do it. Do you have any jobs? Like I'll do anything. And he goes, yeah. By a matter of fact, we just got a big contract. We're gonna do 80 roofs this summer. We show up at like 5 a.m., have it torn off by 10 a.m., put back on by 2 or 3 p.m. I'll pay $7.25 an hour, and you can be my gopher. And I go, cool. What's a gopher? And he goes, oh well, when you go for this, go for that. When you're done going for the things, you can get
You're
up on
gonna
the roof
love
and
it.
learn how. Yeah, you're gonna love it. And actually, right? I mean, you get it. And I was like, well, I was the best dang gopher he ever had. I mean, I just leaned into the whole thing. I was just like, I loved the old school like camaraderie and like catcalling and just like that masculine environment. Honestly, for like a young guy in the late '90s, it was amazing.
Right.
And I just became the best gopher he ever had and learned how to roof. And by about midsummer, he turns to me one day and he says, I think he saw potential like that he didn't see in the other guys. I mean, you can imagine it's a pretty rough crew, a lot of substance issues with the guys and stuff like that. It's hard work. I get it. And he said, well, I'm paying you $7.25 an hour. What do you think I'm charging the clients? I go, $7.25 an hour. I'm like, not knowing at all how anything worked. And he laughed and he goes, no. I usually charge like 2 or 3 times, maybe even 4 times your labor for them. And I go, oh, why would you do that? And then he explained profit and overhead and downtime and the risk and the reward and how a business worked. And then I also noticed a big difference between Bruce, the guy is my dad's friend, and my dad. And Bruce had zero anxiety about money. And dad had all kinds of anxiety about money. One of mom and dad's favorite things they would say to me all the time, and I realized it was a cope. Now that like I can see further back, they would do the typical like having money isn't everything, not the period. And then Kanye West, my favorite rapper, about 15 years ago, said something that in one of his songs that he finished the sentence for me. I was like, once I heard that, and honestly, a lyric, I was like, oh, that's the part that's why that phrase bugged me so much with mom and dad. Kanye's version is having money isn't everything, not having it is. And I went, yeah, it was everything when you don't have it. Like it's not,
Right.
I'm not even a person who is like, I don't go out. I drive a 2015 Suburban. It's got 243,000 miles on it. I reuse plastic bags and stuff like that. Like I'm pretty frugal. I really don't go out there and have all these flashy things, but I definitely am a person who wants to be free from the anxiety of not having money. And I think that's why I do so many different things and consider myself a serial entrepreneur, is because
it's definitely once you learn that you're kind of stagnant in a job. If you get a job and you have a wage, you can only make so much money. You only have so much time. But when you start really figuring out how to make things on your own, you can stack as many of those as you want and have the fallback and have an ability to make more if you need it.
Yeah, 100%. You can never lay yourself off either. That's
Right.
the primary, you could, but like, that's the primary reason why I started our architecture companies. I got laid off and I was so freaking mad in 2009 during the Great Recession about how crappy those business owners were who just did not have a diverse company. They just relied on like one specific kind of client, architectural client. And I was devastated. And I had 2 kids. I mean, I still do. And it's like, oh my gosh. And I was just like, I never want to do that to myself again. And it's a lofty goal, but I have upheld it since. We've been in business for 15 years. I've never had to lay anybody off. And I really intend to keep it that way.
Yeah, that's the other side of it, and I'm kind of in that trying to figure things out and doing multiple streams of income and I get to a point where I don't know if I want to get to a place where I need employees, because that changes the ball game. It changes the mindset. If I can risk myself, and figure it out, but then once I have to account for other folks, it's I account for my wife all the time, but don't tell her I'm saying this. She's in the other room listening, but it's family decision. But when I'm somebody else's family is relying on me, I can't make that step yet, and I envy anybody that can, because that's a big load to bear.
Yeah, it is. It's I will say, like, I don't have any crushing anxiety over it for sure. I kind of
you've made decisions to mitigate that, but yeah,
I try to use it as motivation, to like always sort of have that fuel and that hunger to make sure people are fed. Like, and I like taking care of people in that kind of way and being a provider. I mean, I've really always been that way. I mean, I was a single dad for 3 years all by myself after my first wife literally abandoned us and moved to Montana and all of that. And I look back at that time, even though it was completely dirt poor, paycheck to paycheck, just starting the business, it was actually one of the happiest times of my life. Easily. I mean, it was just like, you just really appreciate like the most simple things. And I've also tried to carry that through. I was just telling my girlfriend that a couple of days ago. I'm like, that's why I take like meals so seriously, because this could all be taken away. All the cool stuff, all the success, it could all be taken away at any time. And I would still be just as happy with like, I get 2 really good meals a day. Like, that would be my focus then, in terms of like a baseline.
When we sold our farm in Minnesota, we downsized and moved into an RV and a truck. All our possessions are with us, and the shift in mindset when we went from having 3 outbuildings full of junk and farm equipment and everything to a 32-foot camper with 3 St. Bernards, my wife and I, and all our possessions, and between that and the pickup truck was it was freeing, and realizing that I can be happy with that limited amount of stuff makes it so much easier.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So no matter what, I want to really keep that mindset for myself too. Is like, another place that makes me super happy is that is it an expensive place? Like, not really at its base, and so I was like going up into the mountains and finding solitude up by an alpine lake. That's a pretty cheap day, actually. Like, I could be doing all kinds of other stuff, and trust me, I do. Like, I'm going to take my daughter to like New York City this spring with my girlfriend. That's going to be an expensive trip, and we do that stuff. But man, I really don't want to lose track of that, no matter how much more successful or not, we get in the next 40 years.
Right. So you were working for a contractor, you learned roofing. He kind of mentored you into that entrepreneurial spirit. Did you go from there? You went to school for architecture, I assume?
Well, actually, yeah. Sorry, I know we got a little derailed there. Is like
it happens.
Yeah. Back to that anxiety. It's like, oh, Bruce doesn't have this anxiety. I want to be like Bruce. I want to be a builder. I should be a general contractor. I just love this work, and I could be my own boss. And like, he really inspired me in that way. And so I asked him at the end of the summer, I'm like, how do I become what you do? And he goes, oh, here's what you got to do is you got to go learn a different trade every single summer. And he goes, so don't come work for me next year. And I was like, that's like I love that he had that sort of, it really was a dad figure in that way, a father figure. Cause like, it takes a big man to do that. I think like you have an excellent worker and you're telling him, go do something else. So that's what I did. So every single summer from 13 to 21, I went and worked a different trade. One, concrete or framing or whatever. And I took it seriously. And then I didn't even have the intent of going to a full-on university or anything. So after high school, I was like, well, I'll go to trade school and I'll polish things up. And I went to North Dakota State School of Science in Wahpeton for building construction technology. Basically, they teach you how to be a commercial level contractor. And I got to our capstone project at the end of that at North Dakota State. It was we had to build a house. And I got to looking at the blueprints. I'm old enough to where they were blueprints. And I was like, oh, why did the architect make these decisions? Like where does all this? I just needed to know a little bit more. And as somebody who's like a little bit on the spectrum, I think that's where it was headed towards. But then something else went, like a light bulb also went off in my head. And it was like, I never even thought about being an architect before. But the architects get the clients first. Like if I got the architect clients first, and then I got to do a package deal, and I could be their builder. So I'm like, I could make so much money. I could probably be a better architect than the other architects because they're not building. And I was like, so I applied. So I graduated, and then I applied to North Dakota State, 70 miles north in Fargo. Got accepted in the architecture program, and then that's why I became an architect. And then eventually, after all of that, after all that, then I kind of circled back, and now we build too. So it's kind of came full circle. It wasn't like this perfect lineal sort of thing. Kind of detracted a little bit and went back. But that's how I kind of got to where I'm at right now.
I mean, I think it makes you a stronger architect too, because you build, and it probably makes you a better builder because you know the science behind it too.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And the third hat that we eventually wore. So one of our first design build projects that we did after starting the architecture firm was we designed and built a tiny house, and it went super viral on the internet because it was nobody was doing anything like it.
Right.
It was super modern looking. And then we got on HGTV for it. So we filmed an episode with them. It was like amazing advertising. And it became, and then it got in a bunch of magazines and stuff. And Subaru eventually saw that project, and they were like, we want you guys to build 2 more, but bigger, badder, better, more foldability, all kinds of, it's like a transformer house on wheels. Okay. And first I said no. My business partner said, well, what if I tell them this number? And they say, yeah. And I go, dude, if you tell them there's a number, like my wife can't say anything, we'll build it. And they didn't blink. And we eventually we finished that project, made enough money to where we were able to buy a piece of land. And then we became full-fledged, wearing all 3 hats: architect, builder, real estate developer. So you talked about it making me better as a builder, being a better architect. The same thing for the real estate development. It's like all of a sudden we could have so much more empathy for everybody, empathy for the field, the guys out there like literally bleeding and risking their lives for us. More empathy for the architects and the real estate developers, and like, yeah, they're paying the bills. It's their bottom line, sort of thing. So it's just been really, I'm just thankful and blessed that we were able to experiment and try all three.
Did you stay in that tiny living space, or did you kind of branch out from that?
We got several more commissions from that popularity of that. And so we did a couple more tiny houses for people and built them and, made that happen and everything. But people are still coming to this today because of those portfolio pieces. They love that we can tackle small spaces really well. Right. And the latest iteration of that has been this ADU movement. So additional dwelling unit. Mm-hmm. Basically, you can put like a little carriage house in the back of your house, right? Type of thing, right? And we have last year I think we did 20 of those. So yeah, it's a good basis for design, I think, and just confidence.
It's definitely a skill. Being like we gutted our RV and well, pretty much, and redesigned it, and now we're designing a smaller living space, and we're putting up small cabins on a property we're working on. And it's definitely a different skill making things small and functional.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, that's what we've kind of tackled onto that. Like if somebody came to us today and wanted us to build a tiny house, I design and build one. I would do another one, no problem. I mean, I think it's still very a viable option for a lot of people.
Yeah. What was your favorite trade? You said you kind of you went and popped around framing.
Yeah, because like you get to see everything like it, you get to see the most progress, and it's form making at the same time, and muscle building, and yeah, there's just something super. It's just something super masculine about it too that I really enjoy. Lifting up walls with the guys. It's great.
Right. I'm a plumbing and electrical guy. I like that stuff, but I was in like maintenance and industrial maintenance and that side of things. So we did a lot of plumbing and maintenance. I never really did a bunch of framing, but I could see where that would be a good draw to that.
Yeah.
So you said so you have the architecture firm, and that's a triple threat, really, with the design, the building, and the real estate development. But you added in professional fishermen in there. How does this come about?
So when I grew up growing up in like Northwest North Dakota is it's very rural. What are you going to do? Like you're going to hunt, you're going to fish, or you're going to be really bored. And we were just not raised as the type of kids that would be allowed to sit in front of the TV, play Nintendo. Like, yes, we had those things, but it was like, get out of the house, type of thing. And so I grew up in these bluffs overlooking this lake, which is beautiful. And mom and dad still live there. And there was this one little special pond, and it was called the Gravel Pit. And it was the only body of water for like 30, 40 miles that was really clear. So because the gravel would allow it to filter, mm-hmm. and then it was the only body of water that had like a significant population of like largemouth bass and crappies and stuff like that. And I spent so much time at that little pond. I just like was obsessed with it, and I was obsessed with fishing as a young kid. I grew up summering in Idaho and Montana, so we'd go out there and do a lot of fly fishing and trout and stuff like that. And when I was in second grade, you get this exercise. A lot of people do this. Or like a teacher would be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right. And at that point, I was like professional fisherman. Like my mom saved it and everything. It's adorable. And so I always had it in my head. And like when I graduated college and we started looking at places to live, we were looking at Colorado specifically because I was like hiking, hunting, fishing, mountains. Like I need this. Like this is, I've earned the privilege to be able to get out of North Dakota and go where I thought we should have stayed every summer, permanently. Because we'd come back from these vacations in Montana and stuff like that. I'd look at mom and dad and be like, why don't we just live there? Well, they had their excuses and family's here and all this, whatever. I was like, well, when I get older, like I'm going to live in the mountains. But the problem is when I moved to Colorado in 2008, 2009, I had a 4-year-old. We were completely dead broke just because like there was not a lot of jobs. The job that I did get, it was like pretty poor paying. My wife at the time too. We had a newborn baby. So you're locked down. Like you don't get to go do all this fun stuff. And I did most of the child rearing. Like I said, then eventually, then I was a single dad completely. And so then there was I just kind of let that part die, the fishing part die. Then COVID hit. And at the same time COVID hit, my kids became teenagers. And all these people who needed my utmost attention for like 12 years, all of a sudden were like, I don't even want to talk to you. I don't want to look at you. Like I'm going to go with my friends. And so me and my wife were like looking at it one day and I go like, we're like, are we like empty nesters, even though they live here? Like, this is what we didn't even think it was, you're just so busy being a parent. And all of a sudden it was, and then I looked around and I'm like, I'm going fishing. Like, and I went fishing and I caught 2 big brown trout that day. And it all came back to me, like rushing back. And then I became obsessed, like severely obsessed. So I would go 3 to 4 times a week. And I ended up over the course of a year, exploring the entire James Peak Wilderness, Indian Peaks Wilderness, and Rocky Mountain National Park. Like, wow. I knew everything by I still do. Like the daughter asked me, because I'll take her up there. It's like, aren't you afraid we're going to get lost? I'm like, I know exactly where we're at. Like, I know exactly where we're at.
So you were hiking and fishing.
Yeah. And like some crazy hikes too. Like one of them that I do every year is like 18 miles round trip. And it's like I have people all the time. They're like, you're nuts. I'm like, no, this is like life. This is like, how do you else feel more alive? So I was incessantly fishing and doing all this stuff. And I was like, man, I really want to like tell the story of these journeys, because there's so many people that are just never going to be able to make it up to these places that I go, like 12,000 feet above sea level, starting at like 8 or 9, and like epic hikes off trail. Just people like, these are lifetime trips for people.
Right.
And I'd been a podcaster and I'd been on television, as we talked about earlier. So I was not adverse to filming myself. And at the same time, there's a lot of YouTube fishermen coming up, especially during COVID. And then my mom reminded me about that instance. And I went like, I'm going to try it. Like, I bet I could become a professional fisherman. So I started a YouTube channel, Fishing with Lance, and a news break channel. And combined, I think we got like 20,000 followers and stuff. And that technically categorizes you as a micro influencer, and you can go after sponsors and stuff like that. So I routinely am getting equipment and things from people, and then getting paid from the monetization of the videos. So that's what kind of led me there. And this year would be the first year I'll be able to pay for a cameraman full time.
Nice.
Exciting. Yeah.
Nice. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Lance, we're kind of coming up on time, and I like to give folks a chance to plug their stuff, what they have going on, where people can find you. If you want to take a couple minutes and let people know where they can find you and what you got going on and what they can look forward to, then we'll wrap things up.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, bud. We have a podcast, as I mentioned too. It's all about entrepreneurship, business, architecture, engineering, construction. I interview people like Brian every Monday type of thing. And it's called Inside the Firm Podcast. Just go to insidethefirmpodcast.com. I will link in with anybody. If you go to LinkedIn and you type in my name, Lance, last name Cayko, the only one spelled like that, I will link in with you. And finally, check out the fishing channel, Fishing with Lance, and give me a positive comment, like, subscribe, all the good stuff.
Awesome. Lance, I'll get all those links down in the description for the show. I appreciate you being here. Hopefully we run into each other again. We can chat further.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Brian. Appreciate you.